Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, and we're still locked down. And I heard that the governor may be releasing some of the social restraints. He may be doing it this weekend, but I think it's going to still be a while before we're all together again. So I suspect that for all of us, or at least the vast majority of us, this whole situation is having an emotional toll on us. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of you, or maybe a lot of you, are experiencing some anxiety, maybe depression, or loneliness. That's what I'm feeling, is loneliness. I miss the social connection with people. It's great that I'm not here alone. I'm glad that Chris and I could share this time together. But, I miss people. I miss you. And I want to just tell you about, I'm going to read, first of all, Psalm 142 is where I'm going to talk on. So maybe you want to just pause long enough to go get your Bible and open up to Psalm 142. So I read not too long ago that a man by the name of Richard Schwartz, who's a Cambridge University trained psychiatrist, and he's been doing studies on the problem of loneliness in America. And he notes that over 4 decades of studies have shown the devastating consequences of loneliness. It causes an increase in cardiovascular disease, increase in the probability of strokes, and possibly the progression of Alzheimer's disease. And what he concludes is that many people have a hard time admitting that they're lonely. The social sciences, psychiatrists, and psychologists have helped to a certain extent to destigmatize depression. But loneliness is something that's really hard for people to admit. And because it feels like we're sending a signal that we're losers, that we're unsuccessful. People say they're comfortable saying they're depressed, but they're not comfortable saying they're lonely because, as he quotes, you're the kid who's sitting alone in the cafeteria. Well, I want to read you a story. Actually, it's a song, a prayer of David, Psalm 142. And let me give you the background situation here. David is hiding in a cave, the cave of Adullam. And he's hiding there because King Saul, whom he serves faithfully, but King Saul has gone crazy and is jealous of David and is trying to kill him. So David is fleeing for his life. And he goes to Psalm 42, and you can find this in 1 Samuel 22. It's just a short story. But he goes to that cave, and he's hiding with his father and his brothers and with 400 other men. And it says other men who are sick and feeble and broken and miserable. And so this is the company that David is keeping. David, who was the king, who was he was the commander of Saul's armies. He was a 4-star general, and he was a special forces kind of fighter, fierce. But now he's hiding in a cave, and he voices his distress. I want to read it for you. He says, it's 7 verses. He says, with my voice I cry to the Lord. With my voice I make supplication to the Lord. I pour out my complaint before him. I tell my trouble before him. When my spirit is faint, you know my way. In the path where I walk, they have hidden a trap for me. Look on my right hand and see. There is no one who takes notice of me. No refuge remains to me. No one cares for me. I cry to you, O Lord. I say, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Give heed to my cry, for I am brought very low. Save me from my persecutors, for they are too strong for me. Bring me out of prison so that I may give thanks to your name. The righteous will surround me, for you will deal bountifully for me. And so as we think about this psalm, he's expressing his distress. He's expressing his pain. In the verse 3, he says that my spirit is faint. It's like he's disoriented. You know my way. In verse 4, he says, I look on my right hand and there's no one who takes notice of me. So he's deserted. And in verse 6, he says, give heed to my cry, for I am brought very low. He's talking about depression, and depression associated with his loneliness. And there's good reason for him to feel this way. I mean, he's isolated, and he's being forced to associate with a bunch of ragtag people that don't even come close to assimilating the kind of men that he led as a warrior. And he's only associated with people who are broken and complaining. He has no companionship. And this is true for leaders. Leaders are often lonely people because they cannot disclose they feel that they cannot disclose what they're feeling to the people that they lead. But he also feels that he's cut off from all social interaction. And that can happen to us. Maybe it's happening to you right now. And if so, you're keeping good company with David. But I want to just express to you, I think, ways that we can help minimize and maybe even come out of our sense of loneliness and despair. The first thing that David does is that he actually verbalizes his emotions. He objectifies them by putting them out there rather than holding them in and allowing them to just choke him. There's something about vocalizing, about confessing his emotions. He says in verse 1, with my voice I cry to the Lord. Verse 2 says, I pour out my complaint before him. And in verse 5, he says, I cry to you, O Lord. I say you are my refuge. It's just important. I mean, it would be great if you had somebody that you could talk it over with, but so often we're afraid to talk about loneliness with other people, but you can tell it to God because God cares about you. God understands. He knows the feeling of abandonment. And he knows, just as David was caught up in that cave, some of you may be starting to feel like your house has become a cave for you and that you're a prisoner to your home. So he begins by verbalizing his emotions and talking about that. And that would be a real relief for you if you could do that. Maybe if you have a journal to just write about your feelings. A journal can be a tremendous friend that way. The second thing that he acknowledges is that he realizes that God knows, that God understands what he's going through. In verse 5, he says, I cry to you, I say you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Give heed to my cry, for I am brought very low. God knows. He knows what you're feeling. And so we can just trust that he knows. And that we can claim, in verse 5, we can claim God's provisions. He says, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. God will not forsake you. He will not abandon you, that he is there for us. He gives us tremendous resources when we turn to him. I want to close by just reading a story about a woman who was striving to find rest for her troubled soul. She was going through a bad time, and she was in her summer house all by herself, trying to sort things out in her mind. She had lost her husband, She was very much alone. She was trying to put her life back together. She was sitting in the middle of a big open room in her summer house. She noticed that a bird flew in the window. She watched what was happening absent-mindedly. It was one of those big rooms that had windows up along the top, and the bird flew in the window and then flew up to the top, and then realized that it was trapped and confined. It was started flying around frantically. And over a period of time, the bird became weary. And so he couldn't stay up high. So he started to lower himself down, and he came down until he was there by the open window. And when he lowered himself down, he was able to escape and be free. Wherever you are, God understands. He understands your feelings of loneliness. He will never forsake you. He'll be with you always. And I look forward to the time when we're together again. I hope it comes soon. God bless you.
Hi, everybody from the Dayton and Polson churches. I just wanted to say hi to everybody. Hope you are all doing well. As you know, I am working from home, and so I have been able to still get your phone calls and your emails, and I'm also able to do all the computer work on my computer at home. And so it's been nice to be able to just stay in touch with everybody that way. Please continue to call me or email me if you need anything. One nice thing that has been nice about me working from home is I'm able to drink a lot more coffee. And also, I have my wonderful teenage daughter, Fiona, who is my assistant, so that's been really nice. Anyway, I hope you are all doing well, and I hope to see you all soon when we're able to meet again. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you to the Carlson family for sharing their Easter smiles.